Order. Question number 12, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Primary Industries. Is the Customs Export Prohibition Livestock for Slaughter Order 2013 still in force? And how does it differ, other than as to dates, from the Customs Export Prohibition Livestock for Slaughter Order 2010 and the Customs Export Prohibition Livestock for Slaughter Order 2007?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Primary Industries, yes, the Customs Export Prohibition Livestock for Slaughter Order, or CEPO, 2013 is still in force. Other than the dates and clarification of the definition of Director General, which was updated in 2013 after the Ministry for Primary Industries was formed, it is no different to the CEPO order from 2010 and the CEPO order 2007.
Order. Supplementary question, the Honourable David.
Was the primary reason for the original restrictions on the export of live sheep for slaughter the death and distress of many sheep while being shipped to the other side of the world?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, I am aware that there was certainly consternation about the deaths of the sheep that happened back in 2003.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Did the reasons for subsequent extensions of the prohibition extend to the welfare of the sheep upon arrival, including concerns that the method of slaughter would not meet the New Zealand animal welfare standards which apply to the slaughter of sheep in New Zealand?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, the welfare of animals leaving New Zealand has always been of paramountcy, and in fact that the CEPO was extended by subsequent governments after this issue arose under the term of the previous government. Animal welfare legislation has subsequently been amended, which will make the requirements even more certain in the future for any stock that is exported from New Zealand.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David.
My question sought to clarify whether the extension was because of this rising concern about welfare of sheep upon arrival. Because
I heard the question, I listened very carefully, I listened to the answer. I suspect actually the answer has addressed the question, but for the benefit of this issue, it's been a focus of a lot of questions over recent weeks. I'm going to allow the question to be repeated.
Mr Speaker, did the reasons for subsequent extensions of the prohibition extend to the welfare of the sheep upon arrival, including concerns that the method of slaughter would not meet the New Zealand animal welfare standards which apply to the slaughter of sheep in New Zealand?
Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, whilst I don't believe I have in front of me the exact answer to the question the member has raised, what I believe was that there was a continuation of concern about animals being exported for slaughter, and the CEPO was continued for that reason.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David.
Mr Speaker, I'm about to seek leave to table some documents, but I think I need to raise the context first. The rules surrounding the release of Cabinet papers entitle former members of Cabinet to access those Cabinet papers, but they don't entitle us to release those documents, and that has to be determined by the government under the Official Information Act. The Prime Minister yesterday referred to two Cabinet papers in attacking the opposition and didn't release them, and it's now my intention to seek leave to table those two documents, but I want to alert you to this issue so that you can consider whether it is within the power of Parliament to order the release of those documents.
This is an important point of order, and I wish to hear it.
And you might want to take other contributions from the House before you determine that, but it's an important point, I think, that needs to be determined before I seek that leave.
Can I just clarify with the member raising the point of order? He is saying to me that by convention he has no rights as a former minister to table that Can I just have that clarified by the member?
No, I'm not saying that, sir. My understanding is that Parliament's in control of its own destiny. The difficulty that the opposition has is that we were attacked with these papers. We haven't got the right to release them. I would like them to be released. I don't think there's any public interest that serves their not being released. But I just, because it is slightly unusual, want to seek some confirmation that indeed Parliament is in charge of its own destiny here.
I'll hear from the Honourable Simon Bridges.
Well, I think there's 2 points at least on this relatively complex matter, Mr. Speaker. I think the first is the precedent effect. It was create, I think, a very bad precedent where suddenly any member could table or at least seek to table cabinet papers of former governments, and I think actually as much as for the opposition as for the government that would be truly unfortunate. I think secondly there is a very proper process to go through on these papers outside of this place that needs to be gone through.
Order. Can I just, before I make a ruling on this, clarify, is the member going to seek leave to table the papers now, or is the member intending to ask us further supplementary?
Papers here, sir, and I intend to seek leave to table. They can, of course, refuse leave, but I think I'm entitled to put
Order. And I think the best way forward is exactly that. The member's attempting to, in fact, break what has been a cabinet convention for a long period of time that serves the purpose of both ministers that are in government and the purposes of former ministers who are now in opposition and may potentially be back in government. I think the best way forward for me is I will be asked to put the leave. I intend to put the leave, and it would not be a surprise to me if the current government did object to it, but that will be a choice for Parliament. I'll hear from Grant Robertson.
Mr. Speaker, just to clarify the point around the convention. So the important element in the convention is that former ministers are given the opportunity to look at those papers and decide whether or not they go back. What Mr. Parker is saying is that on this side of the House, we, as representing those former ministers, are happy for the papers to be released. So that's the element of the convention. The second part of it is then what the government chooses to do, and that is what we will then be testing through the House. So the convention is met by what has been done here.
Does the member, the Honourable Simon Bridges, wants to add?
I think in order to be helpful, Mr. Speaker, what also occurs in my second point of the process outside of this place is that there is a cabinet manual process, and I think in terms of comity or respect between the executive and this Parliament, leave shouldn't be put, and I would put that to you. I think to propose a helpful alternative to that is that we would certainly be happy as government to see opposition seek to expedite the proper process on this so that the papers in a proper way can be released. But I don't think it is for this place to be doing that when there is a cabinet manual with rules that do need to be followed through. But they could, and we could foreseeably be doing that in the next day or two in terms of the process outside of this place.
I accept what the Minister is saying, and members may have a chance to exercise their right shortly. The Honourable David, does the Minister...
Speaking point of order.
The Honourable Phil Goff wants to speak further to this point of order.
Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet Convention is that there is confidentiality surrounding documents that are released to former ministers. They have been released to me. My name and the name of the Honourable Jim Anderton appears on that. Both of us are happy for these papers. I'm sorry, this is a point of order. Can I be heard in silence, please? Both of the ministers concerned are happy for these papers to be released in full without deletions, and the only procedure that normally follows is that the government then formally does it under the Official Information Act. So we're not actually breaking the convention if the government agrees to the release in the House now.
I'll hear, and this is the final point because I don't think I need further help, but the Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I think the House, and the House of course is in charge of its own destiny, but the House needs to think through that this is a clear process in the Cabinet manual for this. I think it's excellent that the ex-ministers have made the call that they are prepared to have those papers released, but an appropriate approach would be to respond to the executive and say we're happy for those papers to be released and for that to actually occur, and then we don't have any risk of upsetting the process of the Cabinet manual or existing convention, Mr. Speaker. And I would suggest that that's the correct approach for the opposition members to take rather than the approach that they're seeking to take, which is to circumvent that process.
Order. The point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
Yes, I seek leave, firstly, to table paper livestock exports for slaughter and arrangements for sheep exports for slaughter to Saudi Arabia dated 3 August 2007, paper ERD 0714.
Order. On the basis that I'm satisfied the convention has been fulfilled by the points made by the opposition former ministers who have said they're happy with it, I'm going to put the leave, and it's over for the House to decide. The House is the master of its own destiny in this case. Leave is sought to table that particular cabinet paper. Is there any objection? There is objection. Order. Order. Order.
Point of order.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
I seek leave to table a paper ERD 0727, which is dated 16 October 2007 and is titled New Zealand's Requirements for Livestock Exported for Slaughter.
And leave is sought to table that particular document. Is there any objection? There is objection. Point of order, the Honourable Stephen George.
Just by way of clarification, can we now confirm that the opposition have consented to that release and the executive can proceed without any further correspondence from the opposition?
Oh, that's so.
Point of order.
I'll hear from the Honourable David
You've
Parker.
already heard that from Mr Goff.
Yeah. Order. What the executive decides to now do with this matter is their business. Further questions? That concludes questions for oral answer. I call on Government Order of the Day number... Order. I thought there may have been some further supplementaries. That's why I called for them. But on this occasion, we'll step back 20 seconds.
Thank you, Mr
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, the Honourable David
Thank
Parker.
you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, when he renewed the prohibition on live sheep for slaughter exports in 2013, did he advise Cabinet that this would breach the rights of the Al Khalaf Group or the Saudi government?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, I have no information in order to answer that question.
Supplementary question. Order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Has his ministry ever advised him in writing that New Zealand faced a credible claim of $20 to $30 million from the Al Khalaf Group?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Primary Industries, I don't believe that question is addressed to the correct Minister, and I certainly do not have any information to answer it.
Mr Speaker, I wasn't asking about MFAT advice, I was asking about the Minister's own ministry.
Order, but the question was still addressed. The Minister, in answering, said she did not have that information. Point of order, Grant Robertson.
Mr Speaker, as you noted in one of your rulings, this has been a matter in front of the House for some time now with
Order, can I just have the point of order, please?
Range of questions. The Minister coming to the House and saying that she doesn't have the information, I don't think is treating question time with the respect that it deserves.
Well, I disagree. When a minister's answering on behalf of another minister and doesn't have the information, I'd far prefer to see the minister take that approach than attempt to guess the answer and be found to be incorrect. That concludes questions for oral answer. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.